webcast is being recorded by Westford Cat. We respectfully ask that everyone mute their computer microphones and phones when they are not used to avoid unnecessary noise during the meeting. This is an open meeting, so for all the panelists who have access to the chat panel, I would like to remind you not to use the function to discuss any of the contents of the meeting, but to ask a question or any technical issues with the video conferencing platform, and please direct them to the organizer, who is Matt Salem. All votes will be done by roll call. All attendees are muted upon arrival into the meeting platform to reduce unnecessary sounds from disrupting the meeting. If an attendee wishes to contribute a question or comment, they may virtually raise their hand via the platform's control panel, and the chair will recognize and unmute the participant where they can voice their concern, similar to approaching the microphone at a live meeting. Or individuals may submit questions and comments to the chair and staff by utilizing the question function. These will be compiled and included into the hearing at the appropriate portion. Due to the limitations of the platform, attendees that are accessing the meeting via the telephone number at the bottom of the agenda will only be able to listen to the proceedings and will not be able to contribute. Please access the video conference via the link on the agenda, even if you do not have a webcam to participate. With us tonight is everyone except for Scott Fitzgerald, Jeff Morissette, the Director of Land Use Management, Rebecca Cheney, the town planner, and Matt Salem, the assistant town planner. With that being said, we have minutes of August 19th. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions? If not, then a motion would be in order to accept as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Scott?
Yes.
Dave? Dave, you can't hear us? Jay?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna thank, evidently David can't hear us.
Mr. Earl.
Yeah, I can hear.
Oh.
Your instructions were that the coordinator was going to unmute people, but they didn't. So
All right, why don't we just leave it the way we've done it in the past, David? If you're not muted, that's fine.
Okay, I won't
Um,
step on your toes.
Well, go ahead, feel free. The next item is the non-public hearing item. With regards to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Smart Growth Overlay and Starter Home Districts. Rebecca, will you kind of introduce the people and what this is all about?
Sure. So last January, the town, through the planning department, we responded to an RFP from NIMCOG, the North Middlesex Regional Council of Governments, which is our regional planning agency. They had asked for an RFP for funding from the district local assistance grants, or DLTA, which are provided through DHCD, or the Department for Housing and Community Development. And one of the things we proposed was that we have a presentation to our land use board regarding as of right zoning districts for starter homes, which would be under the state's Chapter 40R or Smart Growth Program. And tonight we have with us two folks from DHCD, Bill Rail and Elaine Vina. I hope I said that right, Elaine. And they will give us a presentation, I think, to 20 or 30 minutes about starter homes, and then you feel free to have a conversation or ask questions after the presentation. I will turn it over if that's enough info.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Bill Rails here, and my colleague Elaine Vina is with me. And I hope we'll jump in if I start to, if I go off track. Thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for that introduction, Rebecca, and to the board for this opportunity. Let me see if I can get my screen up here. Can people see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, first slide there. So
Yes.
my understanding was that the interest was in starter home zoning districts specifically, not so much the smart growth zoning districts, the initial Chapter 40R. But I am happy to talk about both, but these slides sort of focus on the starter home zoning districts. And,
Bill, can I just interrupt you for 1 second? That's correct. You're correct.
Okay.
That it was the starter homes. I just mentioned the smart growth portion of it, but you're correct.
This, by the way, this image is of a development called Concord Riverwalk, I think, which people may be familiar with. It's sort of a cottage design pocket neighborhood, some folks call it. We don't actually have a starter home zoning district, I'll just say up front at this point. But this is, I think, sort of one vision of it, of what it might look like, I guess. So starter home zoning districts are part of 40R, and just 40R more broadly is a voluntary program to encourage cities and towns to adopt and implement zoning that allows for compact, mixed income, by right development in areas with existing or planned infrastructure and better access to retail and services through direct and indirect financial incentives. And it can also be a tool to better manage growth. So just sort of by way of background, I think I did include a table and this map in the packet that was distributed to the board, but this just shows you our existing 40R districts, more or less, where they're distributed across the state. The information in the table that was in the packet is slightly updated. We now have, I think, 55 approved districts and in 45 municipalities. And I think we're just about at 5,000 units built or under construction, and many more than that zoned under the program. So as I mentioned, the starter home provision was subsequently added as part of the 2016 so-called Economic Development Bill. We completed the regs in the following year, and I think sort of got operational at the end of 2017. Starter home. So what is a starter home? The amendment to Chapter 40R defines it as a single-family home not exceeding 1,850 square feet in heated living area. It also allows for accessory dwelling units up to 600 square feet on the same lot. Some key requirements of starter home zones. The district must contain at least a minimum of 3 contiguous developable acres. And there's a definition for what is considered developable land. The zoning has to allow for at least 4 units an acre, which would be, roughly 10,000 square foot lots. And 50% of the starter homes must contain at least 3 bedrooms. A minimum of 20% of the units must be affordable at 100% of area median income. One provision that that starter homes applies to starter homes that wasn't sort of at least explicit for the ordinary smart growth zoning districts is it draws in DEP. They have a role to the extent that there are local environmental or health regulations that exceed state standards. DEP would either have to make a determination that the conditions actually warranted those sort of extra environmental health regulations, or DHCD would have to determine that the standards would have to receive evidence, essentially, that the conditions would not, or the regulations wouldn't render the development proposed infeasible or allowed under the zoning. Some other restrictions, projects cannot be age restricted. I think that was something that was debated in the course of developing the regulations and with the various advisory group that was put together, but ultimately felt that it sort of just kind of conflicted with the name of the the program, Starter Home. The use of incentive and this bullet applies to all 40R districts now, whether smart growth zoning districts or starter home districts, because of a change in the funding source for the payments that a community is eligible for under the program. They're now restricted to capital expenditures. Prior to that, the money could be used for whatever purpose the municipality wanted to. And the capital expenditures do not have to be spent in the smart growth district or related to it in any way. Accessory dwelling units, they can qualify as bonus units. That's the, and I'll get to the payments in a minute, but that's basically the second payment. They wouldn't necessarily apply or count as incentive units, at least certainly not unless they were sort of built as part of the initial development, I think. So sort of going back to what is an eligible location under 40R, there are three basic types of eligible locations. There's one that's sort of transit oriented, for lack of a better term. There's another called an area of concentrated development, and a third is called the other highly suitable location. I'll tell a little more about these. One is I don't know that this applies to Westford, but if there's a subway station or commuter rail station, a bus or ferry terminal, it would be in the starter home. It's within 1 mile distance of such a station, a transit station, with the possibility of extending it up to 1.5 miles. The area of concentrated development is basically an existing commercial area. So, and this is the eligible location itself. The district is just, you know, it could be just a portion of that eligible location, but the eligible location has to be at least 50% commercial. And I think that basically covers it, you know, city or town center or other existing commercial district. At least 50% of it has to be previously developed land as well. The third category, as I mentioned, is the other highly suitable location. It's essentially sort of to capture other areas that would have infrastructure, walkability, other sort of quote unquote smart growth areas where it makes sense to develop, or at least offer incentives to develop. And some examples of this might include, you know, relative to the smart growth zoning districts, we've seen, you know, old state hospital sites have fallen into this category. And there are, you know, one requirement is that it's at least there's pet access to some sort of what's termed a destination of frequent pedestrian use, or a pedestrian destination, which could include a library, school, retail, office, playground, etc. So in terms of the payments, there's an upfront zoning incentive payment, which is there's a scale you can see here with essentially the number of units allowed under in the starter home zoning district. It's obviously, it starts out very low. If a small starter home district would just receive a $10,000 payment, and furthermore, you have to deduct any units that are already allowed as of right under the existing zoning. So you have to factor that in. It goes up to you know, this scale is obviously sort of some, you know, more relevant, or more was initially developed with the smart growth districts in mind, which have higher densities. But go up to $600 for a district that would contain 501 or more units, net new units with respect to what is allowed as of right under the zoning. I should mention also that I don't think that starter home zoning is 40R zoning in general is conceived of as overlay zoning. All else being equal, the existing zoning would remain in place. The second payment is the density bonus payment, or with respect to starter homes districts, I think it's referred to in the regulations as the production bonus payment. That is $3,000 for each new unit. Again, minus any units that were allowed previously as of right within the district or the applicable portion of the district. As far as, I should add, I sort of juggled around slides and tried to reduce this for the starter home presentation, but I realized I didn't. One thing that fell off was the 40S, the school cost reimbursement payments. Starter homes are also, starter home zoning districts or municipalities who have starter home zoning districts are also eligible for those reimbursement payments to the extent that school-age children move into the district and the cost of educating those children as determined by the State Department of Education exceeds essentially a share of the corresponding real estate and excise taxes. I think roughly 60% of the real estate and excise taxes associated with the development under the starter home zoning. So as far as the process is concerned, usually we just have an initial consultation. If there's a specific area that's under consideration, one requirement before submitting the application is a public hearing on the application and the draft zoning. The zoning, we have an application that's available online that is submitted to us for what is the first of basically three basic steps, which is the preliminary determination of eligibility. That's where we receive the application, we review the zoning, and we essentially issue a letter, determination of eligibility that spells out what payments the community anticipated would be eligible for, and that we've approved the zoning. Then it goes back to the local level for adoption at town meeting in the case of towns. Then it would go to the AG for the AG's approval. And once we receive evidence that the AG has approved it, we issue a second letter, a letter of approval. Sometimes can be a letter of conditional approval if there are certain conditions that were identified that might need to, such as infrastructure that isn't sort of customarily built or buildable by the developer in the ordinary course of development, I'll say. Some sort of big ticket item where we might put a condition on the payments, but the district would be approved. And once the conditions are satisfied, the community would be eligible for the payment. Otherwise, if it's if there's nothing like that, we would just issue this, final letter of approval, and the community would be eligible for the zoning incentive payment upon receiving that letter. And then at that point, the district is in full effect and the municipality can begin to review and permit projects under the zoning. And that's sort of the basic intro. We can, I guess, open it up to questions.
Okay, I have a couple of starters. I'm a little bit surprised in a way that there are so many areas that have already signed on to this, if you will. From a perspective, the thing that bothers me, but I will only talk about Westford in particular. The couple of things that bother me is the 4 units per acre. I mean, that seems to be, even though these places are, you know, fairly small, that seems to be an awful high density. And I'm a little bit surprised that that is the figure. And bearing that in mind, and the 3 acre minimum, you know, unfortunately, in many towns, but here again, Westford only, the land is so expensive, I don't know that you'd ever get anybody to build any of these.
It's a fair question. I mean, candidly, we have not had any applications under the starter home. Today, we've got, as of yet, we have spoken to a few communities that are interested in working on it. The one that seems most serious is the city of Salem. They are, you know, they have a little hiccup they've got to deal with, but they are interested in pursuing it. As far as the density is concerned, I mean, I think you raise a good point. I mean, for some towns, this may be, you know, more dense than you can are willing to entertain. But I think that I'll just point out that the 40R zoning allows single family up to 8 units an acre. So I think this was an attempt to that wasn't getting a lot of use. Essentially, most of the 40R districts, or I'd say 40R districts, to be clear, the smart growth zoning districts relative to the starter home zoning districts. Most of those are multifamily developments. So I think this was really, and also candidly, I think this was really pushed by the home builder community. They were very active on this and participated in the advisory committee. And they sort of felt that this was the density that they needed to
Okay.
make it work. I guess.
Relative to that, you just said something that I must have misunderstood in your presentation. You said now you have not had anybody apply for this program yet?
The starter home zoning, yes, true.
Okay. The other thing that bothers me, before I open it up to the rest of the board, these payments that you're talking about, you know, for the number of units that are built and the density and whatever, that payment comes back to the town, not the developer? And is that, does that go in the general fund, or is it earmarked for something?
It used to be that towns could spend it any way they chose. It's now limited to capital expenditures, but the capital expenditures don't have to be related to the smart growth zoning district at all.
Okay, okay. Other questions, gentlemen?
The question I have is, when you build something like this, is this the same as like a 40B where there's a lottery for the prospective buyers?
So 20% of the units have to be restricted at 100% of area median income, which is higher than the 40B that people are used to, the 80% of AMI. But yes, those units would have to be marketed, have the marketing plans and would be subject to the affordable housing an admittedly higher affordable housing restriction.
Well, I guess in case nobody's told you, that system's broken. You know, we try and have a local preference, and there's been several instances in town where a local kid, and we call them a kid because they're a 20 or 30-year-old something, kind of gets bumped by a mother of 2 from Wilmington. So, in my mind, the system's broken. That's not what we signed up for. We want to get local folks in affordable housing so they can stay in the town that they grew up in or live in.
Well, as my understanding is that, it is like 40B in terms of there are restrictions on local preference. You can have some local preference, but there are restrictions on it. I can't really, I'm not going to, sit here and defend that or argue it. This program may not, it's not for everyone.
Nope.
Okay,
Right now, it's for nobody. No one signed up for it.
Yeah, my sense is, again, I'll just, really the home builders were the driver behind this. And I'm not quite sure, they seemed, when they were developing it, and pushing it, they seemed to, think that there was a lot of demand for it and use for it. I'm not quite sure why they haven't come to us with any applications.
Well, I have to believe that it's probably, pushback from the municipalities. I mean, what I said about the density, and then on top of that, I forgot to mention, you want at least, or whoever put it together, wants at least 50% with 3 bedrooms. That's a hell of an impact on the school system.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, that was in the statute. So not something that, I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah, no. I'm just making a
It
point.
depends what it's not for everybody. It's, there are communities out there, hopefully, that, might be in a position to pursue this and want to, but, yeah, that's a
Okay.
statutory requirement.
Sure, okay.
That slide that appears on your screen right now, is that an actual development next to the ocean?
That is, it's not a starter home zoning district because, again, we don't have any yet. But it's more just trying to represent the size of the homes.
Yeah.
That's down in Dennis.
That's pretty deceiving.
Yeah, yes, it is. Because it's quite nice looking.
Well, there's nothing that would prevent that.
No?
Yeah,
The cost of the
Any-
land would prevent it.
yeah, absolutely.
That may be, but
Any other questions for the presenters? Well, I want to thank you for your time, and certainly we will perhaps mull it over from time to time. At least we know it's out there now, and if something forms, we will be in touch.
okay. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on, Bob.
Have a good night.
Yep.
Stay safe.
Hold on, Bill. I think
Yeah.
I have a question from the audience if you're entertaining questions, Bob.
Please.
Sure. Let me find the person here. Here we go. All right. Jeff, if you can hear me, you're self-muted. You need to unmute yourself. Jeff Brem, are you there?
There we go.
There.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Hello, everybody. Jeffrey Brem, engineer in Westford, 142 Littleton Road. I have a couple questions for Bill. And by the way, I am vice president of the Home Builders Association, so I should tell you that in advance. And
I meant no, nothing disparaging. I'm just saying, I'm just being candid about.
sure.
my
And this
sense.
project was built in Dennis that you're looking at by Rob Brennan. He is our Government Affairs Committee chairman as of last month. He's a member as well on the board of directors. And as you said, this is not allowed in as a starter home, but it would look like a starter home that we envisioned. There are several projects that you probably know about, Bill, that would be similar. Concord Riverwalk was also not a starter home project, but it would probably fit the mold. My question was, I think everybody confused when you said there were all those districts and 5,000 homes built in the 40R. That was not the starter home program, but that was the smart growth program, correct?
Correct.
Right. So just so everybody knows, there are no starter home municipalities that have adopted this. And I can tell you why. You've already hit on a couple, Mr. Herman. One is the density. The other is the locations and the pricing and so forth. But it needs to be town sponsored. And Bill, you said, why doesn't the home builders bring something? They're looking all over the town, all over the place, but the town has to be the applicant and they have to change the zoning. So if the town is not involved in it, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not like a 40B where it's a developer sponsored program. Is that right?
Yep.
Right. So
Exactly.
Go ahead.
that's why you're here. My question is, that you had indicated, and I think again, we're confused. You said those 3 criteria in the locations for a 40R project. I believe that's only for the smart growth project, but the starter home project could be anywhere.
No, there are locational requirements, but I would say, if you've got a site out there, give us a call and we'll look at it. We'll talk about it. And, we've got some flexibility with that other highly suitable location category.
Well, you need to know a little bit about Westford. We have 110, the strip where you call it the center. It's not really our center, it's our business district, but it's pretty much all built up. There's no land that's 3 acres that I'm aware of on 110 anymore. Even a half a mile off of 110, that's not wetlands and unbuildable. So to a certain point, that's the other reason why you're not getting it, is because towns like Westford, Chelmsford, Acton, Concord, there's no land. This doesn't apply. It wouldn't apply, especially when it had to be near a pedestrian or some kind of city center. Obviously, over 200 years were built in those areas. So I think I don't think that was in the statute, even if it is a regulation, which I doubt, but let's say it is. I don't think it's in the statute, and perhaps DHCD should change that and not require it in city centers, which they do for the smart growth. So I offer that as a suggestion to look at.
Sure. Well, I think they were subject to the same eligible locations in the statute, and which I didn't draft, and
I'm pretty sure they're not, because we talked about it a lot. So if it is in the regulation, which I still don't think so, I don't think it's in the statute. And I would ask you to go back and look at that. And amongst yourselves, if that's such a huge criteria, then so be it. But if it's not a huge criteria, take it out.
okay, I'd be happy to look at that.
Okay. As you may know, some of the members, I've been actively pursuing this, trying to get the first project in the state. But as you could also imagine, it's difficult to find the right piece of land, even if it wasn't in the city, in this town center. So, and that's going to be true throughout most of the areas that people want to develop. I wish you luck in Salem, and I will stay posted on this. And if I see anything or hear anything, I'll definitely talk to Rebecca or Matt and Jeff at the offices, because I'm actively would like to do something like this. Take Juniper is sort of the same thing, Bob. Juniper was on 10,000 square foot lots. I don't know if you've been down there, but those are small lots. That particular project has 59% open space. The starter home wouldn't have the open space, but other than that, it would look very much like a Juniper. And there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, nothing wrong with Juniper. So.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Scott, did you have something? All right, I thank you again for coming and making the presentation to us.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night. Have a
You
good
too.
night.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
All right, next
Bob,
item on the, yeah,
Can I interrupt for a moment? I missed this at open forum, and I do see some people who are here for 124 Main, and we did get a last minute continuance request that was published, but people may not have seen it. So for those folks that are here for 124 Main, they have requested continuance to October 21st. So I just want to let them know if that's for the folks who are here for that.
sure. Thank you very much, Rebecca.
Yep.
All right, next item on the agenda is 71 Powers Road. The applicant has requested the continuance until, I believe it's October 21st. Is there a motion to approve the request to postpone?
So moved. Second.
Scott?
Yes.
Dave?
Can't hear
Dave must have muted himself again. Jay?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
Bob,
did I
that was a
see-
yes also from me.
Okay, thank you. And did I see Fitzgerald here or not?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is 124 Main Street, and as Rebecca just said, they have also asked for a continuance until October 21st. There's a motion.
So move.
So moved.
Second.
Scott M,
yes,
Scott F,
Yes.
Dave? David? Jay?
Yes.
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And I'm going to assume that Dave would vote yes if he didn't
Yeah,
mute
I
himself.
said yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is 32 and 36 Main Street, an application by Michael and Joanne Sargent for a number of variances to authorize a lot line adjustment that results in a lot and structures which do not meet dimensional criteria. That being said, I'd like Rebecca to, excuse me, I don't know whether it's Jeff or Rebecca, to introduce this item and go over what we're doing. I think it's Jeff.
It's
Thank you,
Jeff,
Mr.
yep.
Chairman. Jeff Morissette, Director of Land Use Management. Thank you for indulging our request, Mr. Chairman. We were unable to prepare a staff report, and I just want to give a brief verbal for the board's benefit. So while there are a substantial number of variance petitions being sought tonight, I'd like to first make note that this proposal, it really doesn't call to put any shovel in the ground, and it's really about adjusting the location of invisible property line. And as the board is aware, lots or structures that predated the adoption of the zoning bylaw that don't happen to meet the then current requirements when the bylaw is adopted, they're usually afforded special protection. You may know it as pre-existing non-conforming. Some people refer to it as grandfathered. And just over the years, I believe some of which occurred in the 1980s, there were a number of conveyances that affected specifically 32 Main Street, I believe. And so what happened at that point in time, a lot that was then protected and say non-conforming was made conforming with the addition of adjoining land. And at that moment, they may have lost much of the protection that they then had by right. So I just want to know, even though there's 10 or 11 variance petitions here tonight, a lot of the relief that's being sought is really to legitimize the lots as they exist today, which is similar to the lots that predated the adoption of the town zoning bylaw. And as the board may also recall, you've come across this a few times, there's some additional options provided in the general laws. I believe it's Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81L. In the instance where there's two or more structures on a single lot that predates the adoption of the town zoning bylaw, there are some options for an applicant to try to divide that lot such that each building is on its own lot after the division of land. I know this board has dealt with that before. So while that instance may not be in play right now necessarily, I think it is important to consider that at one time, it looks as though they may have had that opportunity. And again, from a passerby, no one would know if any relief were being granted tonight because it's rearranging lot lines that already existed. So I don't know if that helps to clear things up at all. I'm sure the applicant will present something like this very similarly. So I don't know if you have any questions about that.
I guess the only question I have, Jeff, and I assume the applicant is with us tonight?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. The only thing I would ask is, however you can make it the most simple action and decision is what we would be looking for, but go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Mr. Morissette for his summary. I wish I could tell you I'm going to be that brief, but I think to make the applicant's case, it'll take a little longer than that. But anyway, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, any members of the public who might be following along, my name is Joe Shanahan. I reside at 41 Hank Street in Lowell, Mass. I have been friends with Michael and Joanne Sargent for nearly 40 years, and I have helped them prepare this application and am making this presentation on their behalf. The Sargents are remote participants in this proceeding, sitting in Joanne's office in Chelmsford. Michael and Joanne, if you have audio capability at this point, please say hello. If not, don't worry about it.
Hello.
There they are, Mr. Chairman. So let me begin by saying that I hope I haven't overwhelmed anyone with the rather voluminous application package we have submitted. I've done many of these remote public hearings over the last 5 months, and I've found that while screen sharing documents and plans during presentation serves a purpose, affording each member of the board hard copies of all the relevant exhibits makes it easier for everyone. Further, I've tried to provide you with documentation for anything and everything that might come up this evening, believing that providing more than may be necessary is better than not providing something that one or more of you may want to see and review. So as Mr. Morissette indicated, and along the lines of what the chairman just indicated, while the essence of this application is pretty simple, the history of these two properties and the circumstances which have brought the application before you do require a rather extended explanation and the documentation to back it up. Mr. Chairman, may I presume that each member of the board has received a copy of our application package in the form of the 3-ring binder?
Yeah, yes, we did.
Again, I apologize, but more is better than less. Michael and Joanne Sargent own the properties at 32 Main Street and 36 Main Street. They purchased a home at 32 Main in 1987, and they have lived there since. In 1994, they purchased the house at 36 Main Street and have rented it out for the past 25 years. They would now like to sell the house at 36 Main Street, which has given rise to this application for variance relief. First, as Mr. Morissette indicated, I want you to know that this application, they're not proposing any new construction. And further, while the application is for 10 variances, it is important for you to know that 9 of the requested variances, which the building inspector has indicated we may need, are to clear up possible zoning nonconformities which have existed on the ground at the two properties for over 125 years. If the board looks at tab 3 of the application package, you'll see an email from the building inspector where he indicates to me that these nonconformities may have lost grandfather status. And at tab 3, you'll see Mr. Fontaine's determination letter, which notes matters such as now nonconforming setbacks for the garage and carriage house, the minimum distance between structures and multiple buildings on the same lot at 32 Main Street, and the front and side setbacks for the house at 36 Main Street. All of these nonconformities arise as a result of zoning requirements adopted long after these two properties were developed in the 1890s. Only the proposal for a variance for insufficient area for 36 Main Street will result in any change of circumstance whatsoever. And as Mr. Morissette correctly pointed out, that change would simply be the relocation of a lot line recorded at the Registry of Deeds. And unless someone was searching the title to the two properties, nobody would ever be aware of it. By way of background, over 125 years ago, the Abbott family built the shingle-style design home, barn, carriage house, and garage at 32 Main Street. And then they expanded their property by purchasing additional land, including the home and a half acre of land numbered as 36 Main Street. I'd refer the board to the deed from Herrick to Abbott back in 1894 as Exhibit D with the yellow highlights. Ultimately, the Abbott family amassed a little over 17 acres of land in the center of town, which became known as the Abbott Estate. At Exhibit B, you'll see a plan of that 17 plus acres with the house, barn, carriage house, and garage at 32 Main Street and the house closest to Main Street numbered as 36 Main Street. In 1984, however, after the death of one of the Abbotts, a developer, fellow by the name of Zoltan Phillips, bought the Abbott estate and quite candidly began dismantling it. If you look at the Phillips plan dividing the property for sale and development at Exhibit F, first he sold the property at 36 Main Street, then he sold the home at 32 Main Street, and he retained the remaining 14 plus acres of land to create lots and build homes on what is now called Randolph Circle. Now, although the Abbotts purchased 36 Main Street in 1894 as a house on a lot of a half acre, and again, I'd refer you to the deed at Exhibit D, when they bought it, that lot configuration disappeared and the land became incorporated in the overall 17 acres owned by the Abbott family. Accordingly, nearly 100 years later, when the developer sold to sell it, under the town's zoning requirements, he had to create a new 40,000 square foot lot, nearly an acre, for the house to be situated on. As he was nearly a half acre short of the then current zoning requirement, in order to comply, he took the land on which the carriage house and garage for 32 Main Street were located and used that land to reach the 40,000 square foot requirement. And again, if you look at Exhibit F, you'll see that plan. This was a bit of a travesty at the time, because if you drive by 32 Main Street, you'll see that the home, barn, carriage house, and garage at the property are all of the same historic shingle-style design, and they clearly belong together, which is clearly not the case with 36 Main Street. And there is not even a means of access to the carriage house and garage from 36 Main Street. The driveway to those buildings has always been on the property at 32 Main Street. When the developer sold 36 Main Street, however, he reserved for the owners of 32 Main Street a very convoluted easement arrangement for them to continue to use the carriage house and garage, even though it was tied to 36 Main Street, which created a number of legal complications, including the allocation of real estate taxes between the two properties and the insurability of the two buildings. I'd refer you to Exhibit G, and you can take a look at the very convoluted easement arrangement highlighted in green in that deed from Zoltan Phillips to the Cusmans. Now, when the Sargents bought 32 Main Street in 1987, they also received the benefit of the easement to use the carriage house and garage at 36 Main Street. But as one might expect, it brought about continuing problems in dealing with the owners of the property at 36 Main Street. And I'd refer you to Exhibit L in the application package, where you see a number of letters between attorneys and landowners trying to work out the arrangements that are provided for in that easement in the deed. So when 36 Main Street became available for purchase in 1994, the Sargents bought it, which solved the easement problem and brought the ownership of the carriage house and the garage, albeit on the lot for 36 Main Street, back to the owners of 32 Main Street, as was always intended. After dealing with the tenants in the house at 36 Main Street for the last 25 years, however, the Sargents have now decided to sell the property. This gives rise again to the matter of the ownership of the carriage and the garage and the problem with the easement. In order to sell 36 Main Street, they, like the developer many years ago, are required to have a 40,000 square foot lot, which again would require them to use the land on which the carriage house and the garage are located to fulfill the requirement. Instead, if you look at the plan at tab 5 in the booklet and the land areas highlighted in yellow, you'll see that the Sargents propose to leave the house at 36 Main Street on a lot of 24,788 square feet, which, by the way, is about the size of the lot the house was on when the Abbotts bought it back in 1894. That's shown as Parcel N1 on that plan, by the way. They would then place the garage, strike that, they would place the carriage house and the garage on a lot of 15,418 square feet, shown on that plan as parcel N2. And then they would combine the 15,000 square foot lot, that is parcel N2, with the main house property at 32 Main Street, parcel O-1Z, into a single lot, putting the carriage house and the garage back in the same ownership as 32 Main Street, as only makes sense, and it was always intended to be. In order to go forward with this proposal, the sergeants require a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals to create that 24,788 square foot lot for the house at 36 Main Street, and to combine the 15,000 square foot lot with the carriage house and the garage with the main 32 Main Street lot. Now, Mr. Chairman, that is the overview. Before I move on to the criteria for granting the variances applied for, might you or any member of the board have any questions with regard to that material?
Well, I don't have any questions, but I do need to back way up and let the record reflect that I pulled a real boo-boo here. I never opened the public hearing, so I'm going to do that now, and I want the record to reflect that your entire presentation has been made and it has been captured by Westford Cat. So I think we'll be all right, but I did screw up big time. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Scott?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Jay? Paul?
Yes.
Bob? Yeah, Jim?
Yes.
And Jay, were you there? Okay, well, I have enough anyways. And I apologize, Counselor.
Nunc
Then
pro
does
tunc,
any-
nunc pro tunc motion. Now for then.
What's that?
It's a nunc pro tunc notion. You're doing it back to then.
Well done.
Thank you, James.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Anybody have any questions so far?
first of all, I want to thank you for not being so fastidious as to ask me to do that again, because I felt bad doing it even once.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you're gonna give us the Reader's Digest version, right?
There you go.
Yeah, I didn't know if the applicant wanted to provide just the simplest overview of the relief being sought before he moves into the criteria for.
Can I ask a question, Jeff and the chairman?
Sure.
We're all pretty familiar with this property, and I have to commend the sergeants for trying to bring it back to its original state as best they can. And I for one, don't have to go through all this to say, I'd say I'm voting slate just to get this done. And I don't think I need a sales job on this.
Well,
I don't know if it's circumventing something, but.
No, Paul, I agree wholeheartedly. I just didn't want to rain on Mr. Shanahan's parade, that's
Nor did
all.
I, and it's billable hours, I understand that.
I really don't think you need to go any further, Joe, unless you want to.
Okay, the only thing I would add, Mr. Chairman, just for the purpose of the record, is you have a copy of the variance criteria sheet at tab 7. I'd respectfully ask the board to accept that as a part of the record, and I won't bother going through it.
So accepted.
Thank you.
Rebecca, do we have anybody out there? Well, is there anybody here to speak against this proposal?
I do have a couple. I did have a hand raised. No, I've lost the hand. I do have a question that I can read out to you, though. Let me just find it again.
Please.
All right, so let's see. It says, and I don't have a name. I can't see the name, but I have the hand raised, and I think the hand raiser and the person asking and who asked the question are the same. So I'm going to start with the hand raised. Okay, Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm Bridget Peterson. I live on Randolph Circle, 10 Randolph Circle. And I would request that this proposal be tabled so that myself and the other residents of Randolph Circle have a chance to review the proposal, because we did not actually receive it until another neighbor notified us of the proposal this evening.
Joe, this was never sent out to the abutters?
No.
Well,
I
this would have
understood-
been, this would have
I
been sent
understood-
out.
Mr. Chairman, I understood that the town published notice of this hearing by virtue of the 2-week requirement, and we submitted to the town the mailing labels necessary to send that to all the butters. So I presumed that was the case.
Yes, and I can confirm that it was the case. We send them certified. Sometimes the certified mail, people don't pick it up, and I don't know what may have happened, but I can say from the planning department side that they were sent out. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to indicate for the record that about 10 days ago, the sergeants were contacted by one of their neighbors and said they had some difficulty in pulling up the application package on the town website. So Mrs. Sargent at that time sent a letter out to all 15 of the legal abutters at tab 5 of the handout, notifying them of the hearing on September 16th, summarizing the project as you've heard it here this evening, 3 copies of plans included, indicating if they had any questions or concerns, they could contact her at her telephone number or her email. And she included in that a form letter back to the board if people had no objection. Now, in response to that, the 4 property owners closest to the sergeant's property, that is Ms. Treywork at 25 Main Street, the Hardys who own 39 Main Street, the Hardys who own 40 Main Street, and the Canellas who own 4 Cornell Drive, each of them took the time to send a response to you indicating they have no objection. I delivered a copy of Mrs. Sargent's letter and those responses to your office earlier today. So I don't know why Ms. Peterson was not aware of this until tonight.
What
Okay,
number Randolph Circle is she?
Number 10.
Rebecca?
Mr. Chairman, if I may chime in,
Oh.
we do have record that abutter notifications were sent on September 1st, but for those who may not know, abutters are defined as abutters to abutters within 300 feet of the subject property. And so if you're 3 or more lots away, you may not qualify as an abutter. And I believe that number 10, if that's the address that was just listed, I think that is in excess of that distance. I think it's.
That would be correct. Number 10 Randolph Circle is not included among the list of abutters.
It's down towards the back end of Randolph, next to the last
Okay,
lot.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
We've complied with all our legal requirements, and so have they.
yes, correct.
Okay. My response then to Ms. Peterson, with all due respect, as you heard, unfortunately, you're not within the 300 feet, but this is only a lot line adjustment anyways. Nothing is going to be built additionally on at least 32 Main Street. I'm not quite so sure about 36, but it's actually a lot line adjustment. So I think, as far as postponing it till other people can get involved, I think all the legal required people have been involved. Any
Mr.
other
Chairman,
questions?
I just insert, you were right, there is no construction at 32 Main Street, nor is there any construction at 36 Main Street.
Terrific. And you wouldn't have any problem, or they wouldn't have any problem putting that in as a condition, would they?
None whatsoever, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I had a question on that, from the map, Bob, on the septic for 30, 36. Kind of,
36.
is that anticipated to be a non-issue when the sale goes on a Title V? Is this, if so,
Yeah.
is there sufficient space there to remedy that if there is an issue?
Yeah, there's no problem with this. That septic system was put in a number of years ago. If you look at Mr. Fontaine's determination letter, he indicated that we should confer with the Board of Health, which we did. When
Okay.
when that system was put in, the sergeants had contemplated putting an apartment over the garage. So there was a connection between that septic system and the garage that you see there.
Yes.
We have confirmed to the Board of Health that we are going to take that connection out. You're not allowed to have two lots, septic system serving two lots. So I would have no problem with that being included in a grant by the board either.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone else there, Rebecca?
I do see another hand raised. Let me take a look. Yes, Mr. Ricketson. Oops, I'm not able to unmute him. Mr. Ricketson, you are, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. This is John Ricketson, 2 Randolph Circle. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm also the guy connected with the question that was
Okay.
submitted on the chat line that Rebecca referred to, because frankly, I wasn't quite sure how to participate in this meeting and until we got going. I am on Randolph Circle. We are an abutter. We did get a notice. But I do think it's relevant that the sergeants own other properties than the 2 specific ones being discussed here. While on the one hand, this is just a property line adjustment to resolve the variances, I understand how that could be a straightforward matter, even though there's multiple variances involved. As abutters, we do have concerns about development plans, even though the sergeants have clearly stated that they don't have development plans for number 32. And I'm not sure what was just requested in terms of a promise not to do construction. But I do have concerns that if this variance issue is resolved, and now we have a new parcel N2 that's connected to the parcel where the number 32 is on, and the other parcels, including the 2 triangles you can see in this picture, and another lot that you cannot see in this picture, which is the next lot on Randolph Circle. You'll see that by resolving this and adding N2, the sergeants have a fairly large amount of property then that could potentially be changed or constructed or developed in the future. As a mere resident, I'm not sure quite what the ground rules are for this meeting, but right now there's a piece of land that has some complications to it. If the intention to remove those complications involves future plans for development, either by the sergeants or someone the sergeants might sell to eventually, does that mean it's easier for them, for example, to take a very nice house that they have managed very well and kept up its historical value and convert it to, say, high-scale condominiums or a multi-family dwelling, or adding additional houses to Randolph with access to Randolph Circle as opposed to Main Street? So that's the reason that there was inquiries from others on Randolph Circle, even though they weren't direct development, they're direct abutters. So no one was disputing the legality of the notices given. That wasn't the issue at all. It's that the future implications of this approval might have an effect on all of the residents of Randolph Circle. That's the reason for these questions. So if someone could comment on what potentially could be done with all of the properties left here after this approval is given, that would be very helpful to us.
Let me try to answer that. First of all, if I'm not mistaken, and I know either Jeff or Rebecca will correct me if I'm wrong, on those 2 small parcels that you're talking about, you'll notice the N/F. Is he still there, Rebecca?
I'm here.
Yep.
I don't see an N/F.
All right, well, on the plans that have been presented to us,
First
on
line
those
of description.
on those 2 pieces, it says N/F, land of Michael and Joanne Sargent. That N/F means no frontage. So there's no way they could build on those pieces.
Mr. Chairman, it's convention that the N/F means now or formerly.
Oh, that does not need, I thought in most plans that was no frontage.
No, it typically means now or formerly land of so-and-so.
I do see N/F now, land of, et cetera. And there is a lot of frontage on Randolph Circle. That's the nature of these questions.
Mr. Chairman, Joe Shanahan, if I may briefly. First,
Please.
with regard to the triangular lot that this gentleman has referred to at the corner of Graniteville Road and Randolph Circle, that piece of property is so small, it certainly can't be developed for any purpose. The only reason it's a separate lot is the Sargents purchased that from the Phillips Group long after they purchased the home at 32 Main Street. When it became available, they acquired it. I would have no problem with eliminating the line between parcel O-1Z and that triangle and making it a single lot because it has no value. With regard to, may I finish, parcel O-1Z, that's 32 Main Street. We have indicated we have no problem with the stipulation that there'll be no further construction on that parcel. We would indicate the same thing with regard to the new parcel N1, and we would indicate the same with regard to the new parcel N2. Those are the only parcels that are before the board this evening. The Sargents do own one more property right behind 32 Main Street with frontage on Randolph Circle. It's a little over 40,000 square feet, but it has the barn that goes with 32 Main Street situated on it. So while it may be a developable lot, the Sargents have owned it for over 30 years. They have no current plans to do anything with that particular lot.
Just for my own benefit, Counselor, you're saying that that 40,000 square foot lot is or is not part of parcel N2?
It is not. Parcel N2 is only 15,000 square feet with the carriage house and the garage on it.
Okay, but you just said the carriage house is on this 40,000 square foot lot?
No, the barn is on a 40,000 square foot lot. There's a third building back there.
If you look on the map, Bob, the barn is not shown on this one, but it's kind of like right behind that, off to the right and behind that carriage house. And
Okay,
there's a third building out there that goes on that parcel. That's kind of like right behind the main house. It kind of goes down Randolph Circle, and then there's kind of a little bootleg to the right, and there's a barn back there. So
okay.
that's all kind of
For
one.
the sake of clarity, could someone please put up all of the properties that the Sargents own that are relevant to this discussion?
The only parcels that are relevant to this discussion are the parcel at number 32, parcel O-1Z, parcel N-1, and parcel N-2. We're seeking to relocate the property line for parcel N-1, creating a lot of 24,000 square feet. And the parcel N2, once created, you'll see the little Z's in the line between that and 32 Main Street. That means that parcel will become part of the other parcel. And there's a note on the plan that indicates that.
Yeah,
I
I don't
understand
see, I don't see that this request really has any effect on another piece of land that they may own that's contiguous to this one way or the other.
I think you're right about that, 100%.
I agree. Too bad Phillips didn't do this before they sold it.
Yeah.
There would be no
Are there any
Randolph
other
Circle.
ones? Are there any other ones, Rebecca?
Let me see. Yes, Ms. Peterson, I think, is back. If you have a question, Ms. Peterson, you need to unmute yourself.
Yes.
There we go.
If I might try to explain to you why myself and other residents of Randolph Circle feel that the other piece of contiguous property may be relevant here, it's because if you take the piece of property on which the carriage house and the garage sit and join it with parcel 0 dash, is it 1Z?
Yes.
That 32 Main Street property, that then becomes one very large piece of property. And the concern is that that could then be subdivided or made into multifamily dwellings, which would impact all of the residents on Randolph Circle. And it sounds to me like the Sargents are willing to give a guarantee that they won't build on 36 or the lot on which 32 sits, but not on the remaining piece of property, which is where the remaining part of Randolph Circle would be impacted if this variance were to be granted.
I think
at
that's a little,
minimum, we should be given additional time.
That's not true.
Proposal.
and I think that's a little bit of a push to ask the applicant to say that they're not going to build on another piece of land.
I'm
Mr.
not
Chairman?
sure what we're asking the applicant for. I would appreciate it very much for this discussion if Mr. Shanahan could put up a drawing that was part of his submission that shows the various properties that we're discussing. Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not. It's part of his submission. Can we please put up that drawing? It's on page number 34 of 89 pages in the PDF document.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, I guess that's up to the applicant. I mean, I and I believe the rest of the board know that area very well. And it certainly doesn't make any difference to me one way or the other.
Oh,
I remember when Randolph Circle was part of the Abbott Estate, and then they subdivided for them to have house lots.
That drawing I'm referring to shows the barn that was just mentioned and shows the other lot on Randolph Circle. And if this board could explain to the residents of Randolph Circle why it's not relevant, that would be quite helpful to us.
Mr. Chairman, if I might
Mr. Chairman.
interject, I think the board fully understands the application and the lots that are affected by the application. And 3 of them are up here in front of us. The Sargents own other property which they've accumulated in an effort to basically restore as much of the Abbott Estate as they could at the time. They've got a bond that's located on a separate lot. It's on a separate lot because they bought it separately and after they bought 32 Main Street. So those lot lines don't disappear. They purchased that parcel, the bond is on the parcel, and there it is. But what is relevant tonight and what is before the board tonight is 32 Main Street, the main parcel, and the 2 parcels that we're trying to create, as you see before you. I don't see the relevance of what, if anything, the Sargents ever do with the other piece of property has to do with this particular application.
I agree.
Well, I
It has
guess-
nothing to do with this
I
application.
agree.
What they
I
can do
guess-
by right
uh,
in the future
With
is
all due
something that-
respect, with all due respect to the gentleman, what was his name, Rebecca?
Mr. Ricketson.
Yes.
Rickinson?
You,
Yeah, with all
Mr.
due
Shanahan, you
respect,
mentioned
Mr.
that lot was bought 30 years ago. But there's another lot on your diagram that you submitted that was bought more recently on Randolph Circle. So there's various lots here. And all I was wanting to do is have to be clear about that. Someone else was asking about the barn. The barn is on that picture. Why can't we show that picture, have a quick discussion about it?
Well,
We
what,
don't
I mean,
have-
with all due respect,
That lot
Mr.
is not-
Ricketson, the applicant has submitted an application with all the information that we need. That and I'm only speaking for myself, one of 5 people that vote on this. That has no bearing on this application whatsoever. So why should we waste time and put it up and try to discuss it when it has no bearing on the application that's been applied for?
Is there a commitment not to build on parcel 32?
No,
On 32, yes.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
and to answer one of your other pieces of the question, I'm going to urge the board to put in a condition that in fact no additional building does take take place on lot 32 and also 136. And the applicant said they had no problems with that being a condition of the application.
That's
Mr.
correct.
Chairman, Bob,
So that locks them in that they can't do anything on those two lots.
Bob, excuse me,
Yes,
32, they wouldn't even be abutters to 32.
I'm sorry?
Randolph Circle would not be abutters to lot 32.
No, you're right. Well,
Mr. Chairman,
as
could I
far as
chime
the-
in with something?
As far as the 300 feet, they would be, Paul.
Pardon me?
As far as the 300 feet, they would be considered abutters, correct, Rebecca?
that little triangle would be an abutting piece.
That's it.
That's it.
Hey, Bob,
one-
could I get a couple words in here, please?
Calculation.
Bob, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
So I understand there's definitely some concerns from some neighbors along Randolph Circle, but the parcel that is behind the subject property, the board, no matter what the applicant might volunteer, and there doesn't sound like they're volunteering anything, in my opinion, the board has no authority to place any conditions or restrictions upon a parcel that's not part of the application tonight. And if the
I guess-
board has concerns about access to Randolph Circle from the subject property, the board is well within their right, if they want to place a restriction as a condition of approval, that access to and from, say, the carriage house and garage must be through Main Street or Granitefield, not through Randolph Circle. And I don't know how the applicant feels about that. And as far as any development rights for the existing parcel that fronts on Randolph Circle that is behind number 32, that would continue to have whatever development rights it has now. It's not part of this application. This application can't really change that.
thank you, Jeff. I mean, that's what I was trying to get at when I said that it has no bearing on this application. I appreciate you using the terminology you did to straighten it out for Mr. Ricketts. Is there anybody else, Rebecca?
Let me do a quick search here. No.
All right, does the board have enough information to close a public hearing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a motion?
Mr.
So
Chairman,
moved.
Well, Joe, go ahead.
This is Jeff Morissette. I didn't
Oh.
know this is obviously a fairly complicated decision potentially. I don't know if the applicant would like to have benefit of a draft decision before the hearing is closed. I would defer to the applicant. The board.
Ms. Morissette, are you asking if I would like to see a draft before you vote it?
Correct, before the hearing is closed.
I don't think that's necessary. I have full faith in the capabilities of staff to put this together.
May we then seek some clarification before the board closes the hearing as far as what no additional development means? Is
All right,
it?
the conditions, Jeff, in my opinion, as I saw it, was that there would be no additional building on lot 32. There would be no additional building on lot.
Mr. Chairman, may I just be more specific? There will be no additional building on parcel O-1Z, which is number 32.
Okay. And no development on number 36. What's the number on that, Joe?
Parcel N-1. And we'd make the same commitment for parcel N-2.
But not 36.
Yes, all three.
That is
That's
36.
M1.
Parcel N-1.
Is 36.
Oh, that's all part of, okay. And also that the access to the garage and carriage house will only be through lot 32, N1.
That's O-1Z, that's correct.
That's the way I saw the conditions, Jeff. I don't know whether the board members have anything else.
I have a follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
So when you say no building, I assume you're referring to principal structures and that such restrictions are not intended to prevent the addition of accessory structures? I.e., you don't want any additional dwelling units, but if someone wanted a shed or some other structure or porch deck, I just want to be clear that
Yeah, Jeff, if I may, it would be, there would be no additional construction other than that which is allowed as a matter of right.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
is that it, Jeff?
It is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Second,
Scott,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes,
Jay,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes,
Jim?
yes.
Okay. Can we make this as simple as, and tell me yes or no, I know you will. Can we make this as simple as the motion to approve all 10 variances requests that were enumerated in the application?
11.
11.
There's 7 and 4.
No, it's actually 6 and 4. The building inspector put a parenthetical 2 behind one of them, and therefore put one too many in there.
Can we
So
do it as simple as that, Jeff, or not?
you may make reference to that, Mr. Chairman. I'd also make reference to not only the relief sought, but the criteria and justifications in the application materials.
It's just that I didn't want to have to vote, 10 different variances if we didn't have to.
You don't need to necessarily vote them separately. I don't recall, I don't know if the board requires the applicant to march through the criteria, or is it enough to make reference to the explanations provided within the application materials?
I think I heard from the board that they would rely on the explanation in the package.
Yep.
yes.
Yes.
All right, is there a motion then to approve the 10 variance requests relative to number 32 and number 36 Main Street?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chairman?
All right, and
Paul,
Is that subject to the conditions, aforementioned conditions of approval?
please,
Thank you.
Scott McKay,
Yes.
Jay Ennis,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes,
Jim,
yes.
and I also will vote in the affirmative. For any of those that are listening, and perhaps you, Mr. Shanahan, although you probably know, Rebecca has 14 days to write this decision. It has to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds and also the town clerk. And then anyone has the right within 20 days to appeal our decision. Counselor and sergeants, good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your attention and your patience.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the
Welcome.
welcome.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
stay
All
safe.
right. Next item on the agenda is some zoning bylaw amendments. Do we want to take a position on these items? Actually, I think some of them we already have, Rebecca.
Yeah, so these were all proposed with the exception of one new one, which I'll tell you about, but these were all proposed for Springtown meeting, but because of the COVID situation, we didn't go forward with them. So per state regulations, there's a time frame on the, they sort of have a shelf life. So they exhausted their shelf life when we have to renotice to bring them back for fall town meeting. So we have proposed all of the same ones. So you would have reviewed all of these last year when we went over them, with the exception of the drive-through restaurant proposal. And what we have proposed is to allow through special permit drive-through restaurants in as either a principal use or as an accessory use to a restaurant by special permit from the planning board in the zoning districts where restaurants are currently allowed by right. So there are 5 such districts: business limited, commercial highway, industrial A, and industrial B. So that's
What's
the
the
only new one.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I have just one question, Bob.
Yep,
Wasn't this brought to the town meeting twice and both defeated both times at the town meeting to allow drive-in restaurants?
Yes.
yes, it was.
So
That is
shouldn't this go before the town meeting again?
It
It
is.
will.
Yes.
It hasn't yet.
No,
No.
it's coming up.
Yeah,
She
so
just
what we have,
wants, she
I'm
just
sorry.
wants to know, she just wants to know whether or not this board wants to support any of these or none of these.
Bob,
Yeah.
it's Scott. I have no problem with all of them except for the drive-through. I wouldn't support them.
I'm with Scott.
Okay? Anyone else want to weigh in? Then
Well,
why
I-
don't we have a motion to support all except the drive-through?
So
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Scott,
Yes.
Dave,
yes,
Jay,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes,
Jim,
No.
and I also will support. All right, so we support all of them except for the drive-through.
okay, got it.
Okay, the only other thing I see on the agenda is board reorganization, and with that said, I will turn the meeting over to Rebecca for nominations.
Is
Oh,
there
hold
a-
on. Hold
What about
on.
19 Littleton Road?
I take a
There's
little
one more item.
mailboxes or?
yeah,
The development at 19 Littleton, called 110 Place. You had approved the location of a mailbox when they originally got their relief from you.
Oh,
Um,
I'm sorry, you're right, I missed that.
That's okay. So
Um,
because of where National Grid had to locate their gas line, they had to move the mailbox. So it went from what was originally approved as a 35-foot setback from Littleton Road to now a 24.6-foot setback from Littleton Road. And the applicant is seeking a determination from you all that that's a minor modification and that it can be administratively approved.
Is there a motion for administrative review?
So moved.
Second.
Scott,
Yes.
Dave,
yes,
Jay,
Yes.
Paul,
yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I also will vote in the affirmative. All right, is that it, Rebecca?
That's all, yep.
Okay, it's your meeting.
Okay. So now we are on to board reorganization. Is there a nomination for, I don't know if I start with chair or vice chair first, how that typically goes, or if it matters. If anyone has any recollection about
I
that.
nominate Slate the same as it was.
Okay,
Has
Second.
been.
Second.
okay. Any comments? Conversation?
move, we
Good luck.
close nominations.
You vote to close them? Okay. All right, so that would be Bob Herman would remain chair, Scott McKay would remain vice chair, Jim would remain secretary. Is that what you're proposing?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, Dave,
Yes,
Jim,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes,
Scott,
Yes.
you vote for yourself, I guess. Bob,
Okay,
I guess you can't. I don't know. I'm sorry. Jay,
okay.
Yes.
okay. And Scott F?
Yes.
Oh, Scott, I'm sorry. I thought you didn't show up. I'm sorry I didn't call your name on these last three items.
That's okay.
He's
I
hiding.
thought somebody had said you didn't show up, you were out cutting trees. Aha.
Okay,
All right, if there's nothing else, then everybody have a good weekend. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second,
Scott,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Dave,
yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Paul,
yes.
and Jim.
Yes.
See you all. Thank
Yes.
Scott? Jay,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
and Jim.
Yes.
See you all. Thank
Yes.